The Hybrid. Written by M.A. Robbins. Narrated by Laura Jennings. Chapter 1. The C-130 came to a stop. The tail door opened and the ramp lowered. Jen stepped onto the ramp and took a deep breath. She coughed and wheezed in another breath. Holy shit, what's the humidity here? Mark walked past her with his arms spread. Good old southern air. Humidity's probably around 90%. Zeke bounded down the ramp in his black ninja costume. He's got to be burning up. Need to get off the ramp, the crew chief said. We've got to get going. Jen scanned the airport. Commercial aircraft from small Beechcraft to national airline 747s were parked, dark and silent. No baggage handlers or their tractors. No guys waving planes to or from gates. The place was dead. Where are we supposed to go? The crew chief adjusted his headset and shrugged. No idea. Our orders were to drop you off at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, and we've completed our mission. Now move back, please. Hal jogged down the ramp into a stairway underneath a gate. Can't change their orders, so let's see what we've got. Jen adjusted the double-bladed axe on her belt and followed Hal and Zeke up the stairs. Mark stayed close behind her, scanning the area. None of the schedule boards were lit and all the snack and news outlets were shuttered. Reminds me of a Stephen King novel, Zeke said. Had a scene that described this perfectly. And where was everyone in that one? Mark asked. Zeke smiled. I don't do spoilers. I say we head for the baggage area, Jen said. A sound echoed from farther down the terminal hallway. Jen lifted the axe from her belt, while Hal and Zeke pulled their pistols, and Mark's mace appeared in his hands. Isn't that the direction of the baggage area? Zeke asked. Screw it. Jen wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and strode across the shiny tiles of the terminal. I want to get to the CDC, give them my blood, then reload and go after Butler. Mark hurried to keep up with her. How are you going to find one zombie in the middle of millions of them? Don't know? Don't care. Jen sniffed. All I know is I won't find him by sitting on my ass here. Two men in black suits appeared from around a corner 50 yards away. Jen stopped and reared back with the axe from pure instinct. The suited men reached into their suit jackets but froze when Hal and Zeke aimed at them. Who are you? Hal asked. One of them removed his hand from his jacket and raised it, displaying a badge. Homeland Security. If you're the survivors from Fairchild, then we're here to take you to CDC headquarters. Jen relaxed and lowered the axe. I hope you're taking us there in something with air conditioning. Zeke and Hal lowered their weapons. One of the Homeland Security men, a blonde with windswept hair who gave off a surfer vibe, stepped forward. Agent Daniels. He nodded toward the other agent, a 30-something man with dark features and piercing brown eyes. Agent Rodriguez. Rodriguez flashed his badge. Pleasure. We've got transportation out front. We were going to pick you up at the drop-off point, but all entry to the flight line is blocked. Mark slid his mace into his belt. Let's get the show on the road. Daniels led the way through the concourse into baggage claim. Outside, a black limousine with government plates was parked at the curb. Rodriguez opened the back door. Jen climbed in and nearly passed out. It's like an oven in here. Rodriguez climbed into the driver's seat and started the vehicle. Seconds later, cold air blasted into Jen's face. Ah! Zeke sat next to her, while Hal and Mark took the seat across from them. Daniels jumped into the passenger seat and the limo took off. Jen leaned back, enjoying the Arctic air flowing over her face. I don't remember ever being this hot in my life. Hal peered out the windshield. They were just leaving the airport. Not much traffic, he said. Daniels shifted in his seat and turned to the passengers. You'll get a full debriefing, I'm sure, but we have a fuel crisis, with several refineries down and others in danger from the horde. All commercial aircraft have been grounded, and gasoline is being rationed. Mark frowned. Any attacks since Fairchild? Smaller towns, Rodriguez said. Nothing big. But the military is pouring into the frontline bases like Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho and Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. They came to a stoplight, and Rodriguez slowed as the light turned red. Several cars passed through, each one loaded with people. A cop car went the other way. Jen caught a glimpse of a cop in the passenger side in full riot gear. Smart idea. Makes it harder for the zombies to bite through. The light changed, and Rodriguez turned onto Norman Berry Drive. They passed a strip mall with a smattering of cars and trucks in the parking lot. 2 cabbies stood outside their parked cars, talking. Goosebumps formed on Jen's arms. You can turn the AC down a little. Even an Alaskan girl has her limits. Daniels adjusted the fan speed as the limo entered an intersection. A pickup flashed by mere feet in front of them, and Rodriguez slammed on the brakes, spilling Jen onto the floor. Tires squealed, followed by a sickening crunch. Doors opened as Jen pulled herself up. A late-model truck, its front end pushed in, rested against the folded side of a minivan. Jen hopped out of the limo and joined the others running to the crash site. The truck driver's door popped open. A thin, middle-aged man in worn jeans and a straw cowboy hat stepped out and collapsed to his knees. "You okay?" Jen dashed to his side. He shook his head as though to clear it. "Just a little dizzy." She put a hand on his back. "Why don't you sit down? I'm sure an ambulance is on its way." She eased him to the ground. She stuck her head in the truck. An older woman sat on the passenger seat, her head lying against her window, a star pattern radiating from the impact point of her head. Jen checked her pulse. Weak and fluttering. "What you got?" Mark's voice came from behind her. She backed up and straightened, cracking her neck. "This lady needs an ambulance sooner rather than later." She nodded at the man in the straw hat. "He's shaken up, but should be okay." Daniels jogged over. "Ambulance and backup on the way. 3 minutes out." "Backup?" Jen asked. Rodriguez joined them. "New protocols. Everyone needs to get back to the limo." "But there are people hurt over here," Zeke called out. He stood next to the ruined minivan, his face pinched. "There are 8 people crammed in here." Hal leaned over the minivan's driver, a 30-ish brunette with a gash on her forehead that bled like a stream. "Some of these people will die if they don't get help now." 2 other vehicles stopped on the side of the road, and 4 men came running. "Need any help?" "No." Daniels waved them away. "Everyone away from the vehicles, now." Hal gestured to the others. "Come on, orders are orders." He herded them to the limo. One of the civilians, a bear of a man with a shock of red hair, unbuckled the old lady from the truck and gently lifted her. "I'm not leaving someone's grandmama to die." He bent down to lay her next to the straw hat man, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Bless your heart," the red-headed man said. "Strong enough to hang on." The old lady clenched his neck and pulled him closer. "What the hell?" He struggled to keep his balance before letting out a scream and pummeling the woman with his fists. She fell back, a chunk of bloody flesh in her mouth. The redhead stumbled away, holding onto his gushing wound. The old lady swallowed her prize whole and fell upon Straw Hat Man, who struggled against her. Yelling came from the minivan. 2 of the other men raced back to their vehicle and peeled out. A pair of legs stuck out of the driver's door and kicked in the air as a desperate scream came from inside. Jen pulled her axe and sprinted for Grandma's zombie. She'd just torn Straw Hat Man's soft abdomen open and had her face pressed into his guts like a kid bobbing for apples at a Halloween party. Jen drove her axe blade deep into the back of Grandma's head, and she went limp. Shots came from the limo. Zeke leaned across its hood and aimed at the minivan, smoke coming from the end of his barrel. The 30-ish woman lay face down by the minivan, the back of her head blown out. Zeke and Mark ran to the van. Mark cracked the skull of a teenage boy as he leaped from the vehicle, and Zeke shot through a window several times. A growl made Jen spin. Straw Hat Man's yellow eyes locked on her. Her axe still buried in the old lady's head. She backpedaled out of the zombie's grasp. Another shot came from behind, and a bullet hole appeared in the zombie's eye. He collapsed in a heap. Sirens approached, and Jen wiped blood from around her eyes. Some of these freaking things splatter like a bitch. She jerked the axe from Grandma's skull and wiped it off on the old lady's dress before slipping it back into her belt. An ambulance screamed to a stop, its siren cutting off. 2 police cars stopped behind it, and 4 cops in riot gear and weapons jumped out. Jen stumbled toward them. "You guys can relax. We took care of it for you." A cop with a shotgun aimed it at her. "Let's clean this up, man." 3 other rifles swung her way. Chapter 2. Jen froze. The hell? Zeke aimed his pistol at the cop with the shotgun. "Anyone shoots and you get it first. In the face." The other cops swung their rifles toward Zeke. Howell aimed at them. "You're outnumbered," a young black cop said. "Might as well drop it." Daniels and Rodriguez pulled their handguns. "Homeland Security," Daniels said. "The safety of these people is a national security priority." One of the cops looked at the one with the shotgun. "What do we do, Sarge?" The sergeant kept the shotgun pointed at Jen. "If you're Homeland Security, then you know the protocol and why we need to follow it." Mark had his hands up and his mace in his belt. "What protocol is the one where you pull guns on us?" "Anyone in contact with the reanimated dead has to be put down," the sergeant said. "Anyone who is terminally ill will be put down." He glanced at Mark. "A bullet to the head." "I thought everything was supposed to be okay back here," Jen said. Mark flashed a frown. Now he's not so sure his family is safe. "Things are under control," Daniel said. "But it comes at a price. That's why every ambulance has a police backup." "But what if you're shooting uninfected people?" Zeke said. "Ever think about that?" He blinked, and for the first time, Jen noticed the dark bags under his eyes. She'd slept on the plane and assumed the others had too. Did Zeke stay awake to watch over me? "Sorry, kid," the sergeant said. "Can't take the chance." Jen slipped her axe into her belt, the movement causing the sergeant to stiffen. She put her arms up. "I'm not gonna do anything. But let me ask you something." The sergeant nodded. Jen gestured to Zeke and Hal. "Put your weapons down." Hal lowered his pistol. Zeke hesitated, but dropped his arm to his side when Jen glared at him. "That's better." She turned her attention to the sergeant. "How long is it taking for someone infected with a bite to turn?" He shrugged. "Couple of minutes." She looked at her watch. "You've been here for 5 minutes." She pulled her lower eyelids down. "No yellow, see?" The sergeant pursed his lips and looked at his men. One of them shrugged. "She's right, Sarge." "What if it's a new strain?" the sergeant asked. "Could be one that takes longer." "Strain my ass." Jen walked toward the limo. "I'm out of here. You want to stop me? You'll have to shoot me from behind." "Wait." Jen halted and glanced back. The sergeant lowered the shotgun and gestured at the others to do the same. "Stand down." Jen let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Growling came from inside the minivan. "Looks like you have some cleaning up to do." The sergeant nodded. "Let's go." The cops circled the minivan. Jen puffed her cheeks and let out a breath. "Can we go now?" Mark put an arm around her shoulder and led her to the limo. "How the hell do you keep getting away with calling a bluff?" She gave him a quick hug. "Charmed, I guess." Rodriguez started the limo and they all jumped in. A cascade of gunfire came from the minivan as they pulled away. Broken only by wisps of clouds, the blue sky looked gorgeous, as long as Jen was in the air conditioning. I hope the CDC keeps it cool. The limo pulled onto Interstate 85, and the amount of traffic picked up. Still, it wasn't anything like she'd heard about Atlanta's congestion. Staring out the window at the vehicles passing by, she nudged Zeke. "What's up?" he asked. "Notice all these cars are full? You don't see any with just the driver." The faux leather seat squeaked as Daniels turned around. "Not only has rationing been ordered, but it's against protocol to have fewer than half the capacity of a vehicle." "Is it like this everywhere?" Mark asked. "How safe is it?" Daniel shrugged. "These are national protocols. They're everywhere." "How about safety?" Mark asked. "Heard anything about Birmingham?" "Alabama?" Rodriguez asked. "Nothing specific there. There have been a few outbreaks, and only 2 of them became nasty. One was Dayton, Ohio. Lost 120 people before it was brought under control. Another in Connecticut took a few dozen," Daniel said. And you know what the common thread ran through both of these? Let me guess, Jen said. Protocols weren't followed. Daniels pointed a finger at her. Bingo. They exited onto Route 78, passing pedestrians and bicyclists, crowding the sidewalks. Jen lay back and closed her eyes. She pulled her bloodied shirt away from her chest to get air under it, and it stuck to one side. Freaking zombie guts. I should do a detergent commercial. Just a cup in the wash gets the zombie goop off. She leaned back and drifted off. Jen woke with a start, her hand going to the axe on her hip. The limo slowed as it approached a gate with a guard shack. Iron bar fencing on a brick base stood 10 feet high and separated several high-rise type buildings from the street. The tallest, a concave-shaped silver building covered in windows, glinted in the sunlight. The limo stopped next to the guard shack, and Rodriguez rolled down his window. These people are here at Dr. Cartwright's request. They have no credentials, so I'm vouching for them. The guard lifted a piece of paper on a clipboard and peered into the back of the limo. His gaze settled on Hal. Name? Sergeant Hal. The guard peered at Mark. And you? Mark Colton. The guard nodded as he consulted the clipboard. You two, names? Jen Reed. Okay. Zeke. The guard squinted. Zeke what? Zeke Tripp. Jen laughed. Your last name's Tripp? Zeke looked hurt. Yeah. What's wrong with that? Nothing, Jen said, stifling another laugh. It's just not the name I'd come up with for someone who's so stealthy on their feet. The guard wrote something on the clipboard. Good to go. I'll notify Dr. Cartwright you're on your way. He stepped away from the limo and gestured to another guard, who rolled the gate open. Rodriguez put the limo in gear and drove into the compound. He pulled up to the main doors of the concave building. Jen followed the agents in and sighed when a blast of cold air brushed her face. Heaven. An older guard just inside the door waved them all by. Dr. Cartwright is waiting for you in her office. An elevator ride to the 8th floor took seconds, and they stepped out into a carpeted hallway with soft lighting. Jazzy instrumental music played through speakers in the ceiling. Daniels led them 20 yards down the hallway and into a reception area. A receptionist with a headset looked up and pressed something on her desk. They're here, Doctor. She nodded and looked at Agent Daniels. She'll be just a minute. 30 seconds later, a buzz and a click came from a set of double doors to the receptionist's side. You can go in, she said. Rodriguez held one of the doors open and ushered everyone in. A large, spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Cartwright's office was filled with sunlight. Framed artwork hung on one of the walls, while another had pictures and plaques. One that caught Jen's eye showed Cartwright and the president next to each other in what looked like a serious conversation. From what I've seen of Cartwright, everything's a serious conversation. Cartwright sat at her desk facing them. She stood. Jen, good to meet you. She made eye contact with each of the others in turn. Good to meet you all. She gestured to a comfy-looking sofa and set of chairs. Please, have a seat. Jen took one of the chairs, while Hal took the other. Mark and Zeke plopped down on the sofa. Cartwright took her seat. I received the message you passed along at Grand Forks. I have to say, it left me wondering if the message wasn't misunderstood by the airman who communicated it to me. Would you mind filling me in? Jen leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees. Butler died and came back a leader. But a super leader, Zeke said. Kinda like a top-level boss on one of my video games. Cartwright's eyes stayed on Jen. And so it's true that he controlled a horde that numbered in the millions? It's a fact, Doctor, Hal said. Threw his hands in the air and every damn one of those things froze in place. Cartwright rubbed her chin. That gives me a lot to think about. Jen fidgeted in her seat. I'd like you to take my blood so I can go back out there and find Butler. Mark's eyebrows rose. I don't think that's a good idea. Cartwright frowned. We don't know where he is. Besides, I need you here with me. There's much to be done. She tilted her head forward and peered at Jen over the top of her glasses. And I need you for more than your blood. Jen stood. All due respect, Doctor, but I was there at the beginning of this thing. I lost my dad, Chris, Doc, and too many other people to count. I want to end it. Cartwright sighed. And you will. But as my assistant, where you'll do more to end this catastrophe than you could by charging to your death. Her face softened. It may make you feel better to go after Butler, but your impact will help many more people if you stay and work with me. Jen rubbed the heels of her palms into her eyes. Feel like I haven't slept in days. She took a deep breath and let it out while puffing her cheeks. Okay, Doctor, I'll sleep on it. Mark stood and stretched. Come to think of it, I think we could all use a shower, some food, and a good sleep. Cartwright pressed a button on her desk. Amy, please send Agents Rodriguez and Daniels back in. The two agents appeared immediately. Take them to the hotel and get them settled, Cartwright said. Yes, ma'am, Rodriguez replied. A young woman in a pantsuit burst into the room like an eager intern. Dr. Cartwright, news from the front. What is it? Cartwright asked. There are multiple coordinated attacks against Boise, Las Vegas, and Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. How many? Zeke asked. Tens of millions. The woman turned to Cartwright. General Loomis said all 3 locations could fall within a day. Chapter 3. Cartwright pointed to the window-length blinds. Close those. Let's get Colonel Rogers on video at once. Ma'am, the woman said. I'm sure he's tied up with the attacks at the moment. Cartwright stared at her. There was no anger in her face, but the woman hurried to close the blinds. Cartwright typed on her keyboard, and a section of the wall behind her slid over and revealed a 55-inch flat screen. The word connecting displayed on it. An older soldier's face appeared on the screen. Silver eagles adorned the collar of a wrinkled uniform shirt. His lower eyelids drooped, and his eyes had red blood vessels crossing the white sclera like a lightning strike. Dr. Cartwright, he said. We're in emergency mode. I want details, Cartwright snapped. Some very important decisions may need to be made based on the situation. The colonel's shoulders drooped. This guy looks like shit. Evacuation of Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana to Grand Forks Air Force Base is in process. We estimate 40% of the personnel and 80% of the equipment will make it out before the base is overrun. Shit, Mark breathed. Cartwright's expression remained unchanged. And Las Vegas? It's going to fall. Rogers rubbed a knuckle in each eye. And it'll be soon. There's a line of traffic heading east all the way to the Arizona border. Hordes have broken off and are flanking the city on the north and south. It's obvious they plan to attack the refugees and encircle the city. Howell cleared his throat. What about Nellis Air Force Base? Overrun an hour ago, but we evacuated all personnel and essential resources. Zeke looked up from studying his fingernails. What about Area 51? Did you fly the UFOs out of there? Jen clasped his forearm and shook her head. Not the time. Rogers ignored Zeke. Boise is 50-50. We've launched constant airstrikes from Mountain Home Air Force Base. It seems to have kept the horde at bay for now. Cartwright sniffed. Keep me updated, Colonel. The screen went blank. Butler's behind it, Jen said. I need to find him and finish what I started. Don't be foolish, Cartwright said. Excuse me? Heat flooded Jen's face. Mark turned toward her. I wouldn't put it that way, but what are you going to do? Just walk through the horde looking for him? Zeke slapped the table. I'm with you, Jen. Jen sat back and let out a long breath. I don't see me doing any good here. Why? Cartwright asked. Because you can't be out there acting like a hero? Jen frowned. Wait a minute. You are the only living person on Earth who received a fully concentrated inhalation of the spores, Cartwright said. That makes you unique, and a superb test subject to find a cure. But we don't even know if that will help, Jen said. But if it does? Cartwright asked. She raised a hand, the thumb and forefinger a half-inch apart. We're this close to a cure. If you want to do something to stop this scourge, then help us with that. Jen stared at the floor. She's right, and so is Mark. How the hell would I find Butler without becoming a zombie snack? Still, I'd rather do something more than get poked with needles. Jen sighed. Where do I go to donate blood? Cartwright gestured to the young woman. This is Cindy Hurt. Cindy, please escort Miss Reed to the phlebotomy office and bring her back to me when she's done. Yes, doctor. Cindy turned to Jen. Miss Reed? Jen stood. Lead on. I'll go with you. Zeke stepped to her side. I love this guy, the little brother I never had. I think I'll be safe in the building. Why don't you stay here? I won't be gone long. Zeke pursed his lips and nodded. She followed Cindy into the hallway and onto the elevator, where the assistant put a key in the panel and turned it, then punched the lowest button, lower level 4. The elevator dropped quickly and quietly, stopping at their destination in seconds. The doors slid open with a slight whoosh, revealing a set of double doors with the words "Authorized Personnel Only" stenciled on them. Cindy took an access card that hung from her hip and swiped it through a reader on the wall. A blip and green light from the reader, and Cindy pulled the door open. The room was 30 feet wide and almost that long. A rack of stainless steel morgue refrigerators lined part of one wall, while 2 stainless steel autopsy tables sat in the middle of the room, under large operating room lights hanging from the ceiling. Jen squinted. All the refrigerator doors had keyholes. Keeping someone out or something in. Cindy strode through the room, pushed open a door on the other side, and walked through. Jen gave a refrigerator door handle a tug as she passed it. It didn't move. She hurried after Cindy and into a hallway with a dozen doors, 6 on either side. She went to the first door and peeked into the small eye-level window. An old lady lay in a hospital bed with her eyes closed. A respirator mask fitted on her face. Her chest rose and fell rhythmically. What the hell are they doing down here? She hurried to keep up with the assistant and followed right on her heels as she pushed through a pair of swinging double doors and into a large cavernous room. Buzzing lights hung from a high ceiling, casting a bright glow that reached into every corner of the room. Jen stopped in her tracks. Lining both sides of the room were a dozen large cages, each with a snarling zombie inside. As if on cue, they strained at their chains as Jen and the assistant entered. The assistant glanced over her shoulder and stopped. They're very secure. Jen blinked. I'm not afraid, just surprised. A door opened at the far end of the room. A balding, middle-aged man with a blonde handlebar mustache stepped out with a clipboard in his hand. What do you have for me? His gaze swung to Jen. And who is this? Why is she in a restricted area? Jen followed Cindy to the man. His white lab coat had O'Connor embroidered over the pocket. I'm Jen Reed. I'm guessing you're the vampire who's going to suck me dry. The man looked at Cindy, then back at Jen before he put his hand out. Dr. O'Connor. I work with Dr. Cartwright. Jen shook his hand. Why don't we get on with this? These zombies are giving me a headache. O'Connor looked at the zombies as if he'd just noticed they were there. Of course. I'm so used to them, I've mentally blocked them out. He turned. Follow me. Jen followed him and Cindy into the room he'd appeared from. 2 other people in lab coats sat at separate tables, one working on a computer and the other peering into a microscope. Shelves of vials and jars, as well as equipment like a centrifuge, lined the counters. The door closed, cutting off the growls of the zombies. Please, have a seat. O'Connor gestured to a blood-drawing chair. She sat as O'Connor rustled through drawers, pulling out a plastic open-ended tube with a nasty-looking needle at the end and several glass tubes with rubber at one end. Jen flipped the padded arm of the chair across her lap and rested her arm on it. Have you found out where the virus came from? She asked. O'Connor froze and glanced at her, then went back to rummaging in the drawer. We're working on it. He turned around and wiped down the crook of her arm with a swab. The sting of alcohol fumes made Jen crinkle her nose. "What have you found out so far?" O'Connor stabbed her arm and Jen flinched. She looked away. She didn't mind shots or needles, as long as she didn't have to look at them stuck into her body. Cindy had wandered over to the lab tech on the computer, and they spoke in hushed tones. Jen looked around at the well-equipped lab. Doc would have liked it there. Doc. His name still brought a twinge of guilt. I'll never forgive myself for his death. A sharp jab in her arm caused her to pull in a breath. "Just another minute," O'Connor said. Jen looked down. A full tube lay next to two more. A fourth one was in the vacutainer and filling up fast. He pulled that one out, shook it, and laid it down before slipping another in. Looking away, Jen said, "Looks like a lot of blood." "You'll be fine," O'Connor said. "But I want you to sit here for 10 minutes afterward, just to make sure you don't feel faint." He removed the needle and pressed a cotton ball over the wound. "Hold this here, please." Jen pressed a finger onto it as O'Connor taped it down. "I'll pass on the 10 minutes, she said. "If I haven't passed out from anything that's happened in the last month, then I won't pass out from this." O'Connor shrugged. Jen eased out of the chair and straightened. "Cindy, can we get going?" Cindy looked over from the computer, said something to the lab tech, and walked to the door. Jen joined her, and as soon as the door opened, the zombies came alive again. They'd made it several feet from the lab when Dr. O'Connor appeared in the doorway. "Miss Hurt, Dr. Cartwright is on the phone for you." Cindy put out a hand. "Wait here." She hurried into the lab. "Shit," Jen said. "And I have to stay out here and listen to this?" The door eased shut, and the zombies went silent as if someone had flipped a switch. Jen peered at each of them. All of their eyes were on her. What the fuck? She took a few steps toward the exit, and the zombies straightened like soldiers at attention, their heads swiveling to keep their gazes latched on her. Jen approached one, a young redhead, and its soulless eyes locked on hers. Nothing. Not even a spark of life in them. The lab door opened, and the zombies went wild, gnashing their teeth and growling at Cindy. Well, well, if this ain't some creepy shit. Chapter 4. Jen followed Cindy back into Cartwright's office. What was going on with those zombies? Why did they quiet down when only she was there? Could it be another mutation in the virus? Should I tell Cartwright? Just in time, Cartwright said. Jen broke from her thoughts. Just in time for what? Hal stood next to Cartwright. He put his hand out. "Dr. Cartwright has assigned me to be her liaison with the Pentagon. I'm taking tonight's train to Washington." Jen shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. "Sorry to see you go." She broke the embrace. "You saved our asses more than once." Hal smiled. "And you've saved a lot more with your observations and reports." "And she'll save even more by helping us find a vaccine," Cartwright said. Hal stopped in the doorway. "I think it'll take all of us to save humanity." He disappeared into the hallway just as Mark and Zeke walked in. "Where have you two been while I was getting stabbed?" Jen asked. Zeke smacked his lips. "Got a bite to eat." "Knowing you, it was enough to feed a bear," Jen said. Mark laughed. "Don't you know it?" Cartwright's phone rang and she put on a headset. After listening for a few seconds, she said, "Yes, bring them up." Mark and Jen exchanged puzzled glances. Zeke examined a spot on the rug and scuffed it with his foot. A knock came from the door a few minutes later. "Enter," Cartwright said. An older woman with gray streaks in her curly black hair walked in, with a younger version of herself. The younger woman's eyes grew big, and a smile broke across her face as she yelled, "Mark!" She raced to Mark and threw herself into his arms. "Michelle," Mark said, his voice muffled as he held her close. He loosened his grip on her and put an arm out toward the older woman. "Mama." The older woman shuffled to him, her eyes glistening, and buried herself in his arms. Jen watched the reunion, half fascinated at the emotional display, and half jealous. There would be no such experience waiting for her. She glanced away, a little embarrassed about her feelings. Cartwright sat behind her desk, her face neutral. Is she really like that, or does she have to practice that look? Mark looked up. Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. It's so good to know they're safe, and now I can escort them back to Biloxi. About that, Cartwright said. I have an offer for you. Mark frowned. What offer? I'm not leaving them alone again. Cartwright adjusted her glasses. Precisely. I'd like you to become CDC headquarters chief of physical security. But wouldn't I have to stay here for that? Cartwright nodded. Yes, but part of the offer is that your mother and sister can stay here free of charge. Room, board, security. And that security will be provided by you. Mark's mouth dropped open. He looked at his mother. What do you think, Mama? Michelle nodded. Take it. Things are getting weird out there. I know we'll be safer here with you. Okay, Mark said. I'll take it. Excellent, Cartwright said. You can go through in-processing tomorrow. She pressed a button on the phone. Please come in. The door opened and Cindy appeared. Take our new chief of physical security and his family to their quarters and show them where to eat. Cindy ushered the family through the door. Mark stopped and looked back at Jen. I'll introduce you and Zeke later. I really want them to meet you. Jen waved him on. Looking forward to it. Just enjoy the time with your family. Her thoughts went unbidden to her mother and father. Cartwright clasped her hands and laid her elbows on her desk. Miss Reed and Mr. Tripp. Jen turned to her. So what have you got in your black bag for us? Cartwright frowned. Bag? Sorry, Jen said. Wizard of Oz reference. Cartwright sniffed and her phone buzzed. She pressed her earphone and listened. Very well. Send him in. What next? The door opened and a man stepped in. He looked a couple years older than Jen and wore a pair of snug jeans and a t-shirt that showed every muscle. While not a bodybuilder, he either worked out or had a physical job. Jen's pulse picked up. I hope this one's for me. Zeke yelled. Wayne! He rushed the man, who caught his skinny frame in a crushing hug. Zeke, I've been worried about you. I thought you died when they nuked Anchorage. Zeke released Wayne and gestured to Jen. Jen and Mark saved me. Wayne's gaze fell on Jen and she swallowed. Hazel eyes. She said. Zeke saved us more than once, too. Wayne's eyebrows rose and he looked at Zeke. Really? How? I had this great katana. Zeke mimicked slashing the air with a sword. It wasn't real, but it was close enough. It broke on a zombie. Wayne glanced at Jen and she nodded. He's amazing with a katana. Then we'll have to find you a new one, Wayne said. We're heading back to Rhode Island tomorrow. Zeke froze. But I can't go back. I have to watch over Jen. He turned to her. What would she do without me? Wayne glanced at her and winked. She can come with us. Jen's face grew hot. Is he coming on to me? Impossible, Cartwright said. Jen must remain here. Then I have to stay, Zeke said. Sorry. Wayne sighed. I couldn't get you to leave Anchorage a few years back when I did, so I'm not surprised I can't get you to join me now. The door opened and Cindy stumbled in, carrying 2 wooden boxes, one about 4 feet long and the other half that. She placed the boxes heavily on the table, arranged them side by side, and left without a word. What's that? Zeke asked. Cartwright approached the table. I'm offering the 2 of you positions in Homeland Security. I'm not into groping passengers at the airport, Jen said. Wayne snickered, catching Jen by surprise. A sense of humor, too. Take me now. Cartwright's face hardened more than usual, if that were possible. Homeland Security, not TSA. You'll both work for me, Jen on the cure and virus mutations, and Zeke as protection for Jen. Zeke hovered by the table. But the boxes, what's in them? Jen caught Wayne's eye. He must have been a riot at Christmas. You have no idea. The boxes, Cartwright said, are part of your equipment. You'll receive firearms, a badge, and these. A badge? Zeke said. "Do we get a car with a siren and lights?" Cartwright's pushing too hard. "And what do the badges get us other than a discount at the donut shop?" Jen asked. "You'll be federal agents. They'll get you access and assistance from pretty much any agency." Zeke's eyes shined. "Come on, Jen. Sounds fun to me." Jen frowned. "I'm getting boxed in. Will it get me military assistance when I go after Butler?" Cartwright ignored her and pointed to the long box. "That's yours, Mr. Tripp." Zeke pulled the box toward him and lifted it, testing its weight. "What can it be?" He flipped 3 latches on it and tilted the top back. An audible gasp escaped his mouth. "Oh, my God!" Zeke reached in and lifted a deadly, beautiful katana. "Stainless steel, 36-inch blade." He stepped back from the others and gave it a practice swing. "The balance is perfect. I could take out a ton of zombies with this." His eyes met Jen's. "And this one won't break." Cartwright's face wore the glimmer of a smile. "She had Zeke. And she knows that's one way to get to me." Jen pointed at the remaining box as Zeke removed a scabbard from his. "I suppose this is for me." Cartwright nodded. Jen opened the box and reached in, pulling out a tactical tomahawk, like the one Griffin had in Point Wallace. "The blade is 8 inches, and the length with the handle is almost 18, Cartwright said. "Doc told me you admired this weapon that someone had in Point Wallace." Jen hefted it. "Damn, this is light and balanced well." The sinister blade looked like it would cut through bone, and the sharpened steel point on the other end would no doubt pierce skulls. She removed a sheath from the box, looped her belt through it before inserting the tomahawk. "I suppose this is mine only if I stay." Cartwright leaned against her desk and crossed her arms. "I understand why you want to go after Butler, and you could do that, but you would be dooming many people. Not if I kill him. Killing him won't stop the virus," Cartwright said. "We've got to stop the dead from coming back. Emergency protocols have been put in place, but they aren't enough." "We heard about the protocols on the way here," Jen said. "I'm not surprised that killing people who may not be infected doesn't work well." Cartwright took her seat. "There are more than that. Armed personnel are stationed at all hospitals to make sure the recently deceased don't reanimate. EMTs go out armed. All pet mammals have been quarantined." Jen lowered her eyebrows. "Just the mammals?" Cartwright nodded. "We've determined that the virus only infects mammals, but even with the quarantine, there are plenty of strays and other wildlife that die of natural causes, then reanimate and infect others." She clasped her hands together and leaned forward, her elbows resting on the desk. "The truth is, we're just barely staying ahead of it. There have already been multiple outbreaks that could have spread out of control. With the military and National Guard committed to the threat in the West, we rely on federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. And it isn't enough. Local militias have been formed to help fill the gap." Jen swallowed. 2 threats. Butler and the virus, and I can't battle them both at once. "Okay," Jen said. "I'll stay and help with the vaccine." She walked to the door. "But once it's ready, I'm out of here and on Butler's ass, and I expect your help in getting to him. And in the meantime, I'm gonna find out what's going on with those whacked-out zombies downstairs." Chapter 5. The next morning, Jen and Zeke strolled out of the administrative office. A shower, a good night's sleep, and fresh clothes had done Jen wonders. She stopped in the lobby and pulled her access card out. "I wonder how much of this place we can get into." Zeke scratched the shaved side of his head. No longer in a ninja costume, he wore a t-shirt with sleeves he'd carefully ripped off and a pair of black cargo pants. Somewhere he'd found gel and had turned the hair on the unshaven side of his head into a series of spikes. "We should be able to go anywhere." He pulled his Homeland Security agent badge from his pocket. "Bad boys, what you gonna do?" "Put that thing away, Dirty Harry. I don't think it's gonna do much for you while we're here." She smiled. "But once we're on the road again, we'll travel like a boss." Zeke shrugged and dropped the badge back into his pocket. "So what are we gonna do? I'm already bored." He adjusted the katana scabbard on his back. Jen strode to the elevators. "Cartwright's supposed to be in some meeting for the next few hours, so let me take you on a tour of the basement." Zeke followed her into the car. "That doesn't sound very exciting." Jen punched the bottom button. "It's right up your alley." "Why?" "They've got zombies down there." Zeke's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Can I kill some?" When they arrived on the lowest level, Jen made a beeline to the card reader by the door. "Let's see how much Cartwright trusts me." She slid her card through the reader, and the door answered with a buzz and a clunk. She pulled it open and stepped into the hallway. It looked the same as it had the night before. Buzzing lights hung overhead, glinting off the tile floor. Not a speck of dust lurked in the corners, and the air held a slight tinge of ammonia. "What's this?" Zeke asked. Jen peeked in the first door's window. A young man lay in a bed with an IV in his arm. His sunken eyes stared at Jen. "Not sure. I don't know if they're treating them here or using them to test the vaccine. I'm guessing they're guinea pigs." She led Zeke to the windowless swinging doors that led to the zombies and pushed one open. The zombies went into a frenzy, straining at their chains as soon as Zeke and Jen entered the room. Zeke reached back and gripped his katana's handle, ready to pull it into action. "Looks like they're only quiet when one of us is out here." She strode to the lab door and pointed at Zeke. "Wait out here for a minute." Zeke shrugged and leaned up against the wall with his arms folded. Jen pushed the door open and eased it shut behind her. She didn't even need to press her ear to the door to know the zombies were still going apeshit. Guess that disproves that theory. "Miss Reed." Dr. O'Connor's voice came from behind her. She spun. He sat on a stool, loading a syringe with an off-color liquid. "You're just in time." Jen pulled the door open and waved Zeke in, then gestured to O'Connor as Zeke entered. "Dr. O'Connor." "Doctor, this is Zeke." O'Connor nodded at Zeke, then turned to a 30-something lab tech with Clark Kent glasses. "Randy." The lab tech looked up. "Yes, doctor?" "You're with me on this one." Randy wiped his hands on his lab coat. "Yes, sir." O'Connor swept past Jen and Zeke and paused as he opened the door. "You'll want to see this, Miss Reed." He led them to one of the cages. Inside, on a gurney, lay the older woman Jen had seen in one of the rooms the day before. Why did they have her in a cage now? Randy removed the padlock from the cage door and held it open as O'Connor stepped inside. An IV drip ran into the woman's arm, and a mask covered her mouth and nose, while a machine on a wheeled table next to her made wheezing sounds. O'Connor waved Jen in. The zombies raised their din to another level. O'Connor leaned toward Jen and Zeke. "Mrs. Jawalski volunteered to be a test subject for the vaccine. In return, her family is living in a government-secured location." "What's wrong with her?" Zeke asked. "COPD," O'Connor said. "She's at the end. That ventilator is the only reason she's still alive." He inserted the needle into a rubber stopper halfway up the IV line and pushed the plunger until the contents were emptied. "Randy?" Randy looked at his watch. "Injection at 8:41 a.m. Jen watched the old lady's face. Was she supposed to turn? To die? O'Connor herded them out of the cage. "Now we wait. 10 minutes. He strode into the lab. Randy locked the cage door and followed the doctor. "This science stuff is pretty lame," Zeke said. "I expected something more interesting." Jen gave him a playful slap on the back. "Now that I think about it, damn near every time you say you're bored, it suddenly gets unboring, and we're up to our necks in zombie shit. How about wishing for something else for once?" Zeke sighed. "I've got to take a leak." Jen pointed to the lab. Saw an open door in the back of the lab with a toilet. "Be right back." Zeke disappeared into the lab. The door closed behind him, and the zombie racket cut off. Shit. So it wasn't my imagination last time. Jen walked up and down the rows of cages. Every zombie stood quiet and followed her with their eyes. She stopped at one, a fresh-looking woman with a pinched face and wide shoulders. She reminded Jen of her 6th-grade teacher, Mrs. Curling. Jen stood right up to the bars and stared into the yellow eyes. No hunger, no hate, just blank. The zombie's eyes flickered and startled Jen. What the hell was that? The lab door opened, and Mrs. Curling flung herself at the cage door. Jen tripped and landed on her ass. Zeke stood in the doorway, laughing. He rushed over. Sorry. He chuckled again and wiped tears from his eyes as he pulled her to her feet. After all we've been through, I never expected you to get freaked out by a zombie in a cage. Jen put a hand to her chest. Her heart felt like it was going to explode through her ribs. She took deep breaths until it calmed. Zeke stopped laughing and put an arm around her. Are you okay? I didn't mean to laugh. Jen managed a smile. Why not? I would have laughed at you. He chuckled. It was funny. Miss Reed. Dr. O'Connor and Randy stood at the old lady's cage. Time to complete the experiment. Randy unlocked the door, and O'Connor examined the old lady. Blood pressure and heart rate unchanged. EEG shows decreased brain activity. What does that mean? Jen asked. We believe the more active the virus becomes, the more it stimulates the brain, Randy said. It's a good sign that the activity is down in the test subject. Significant, O'Connor agreed. This is the first vaccine to achieve it. He removed the IV from the old lady's arm. Everyone leave the cell, please. Jen stepped outside the cage with Zeke. Randy held the door open. O'Connor turned off the ventilator and removed the old lady's mask. Life support removed at 8:53 a.m. He rushed from the cage, and Randy slammed it shut, securing it with the lock. The ECG showed a continued heartbeat. The old lady's chest rose, and a startling gasp came from her lips. Her eyes opened, showing only the whites, and the old lady took a huge wheezy breath, then went still. The ECG flatlined. Time of death, O'Connor said. 8:55 a.m. How long before she turns? Jen asked. Randy kept his eyes on his watch. Between 40 and 60 seconds. 20 seconds, Randy said. 30, 40, 50, 60. Jen watched the old lady. She hadn't moved. 70, 80, 90. O'Connor licked his lips. I think we may have done it. 100, 110, 111. Randy, unlock the door. Randy looked up from his watch. Are you sure? Shouldn't we wait a little longer? O'Connor held out his hand. Nonsense. The poor woman's been dead for more than twice the time of any other reanimation. Give me the key. Randy handed O'Connor the key, and the doctor removed the lock. Jen and Zeke exchanged a glance. Zeke already had his hand on the hilt of the katana. Jen slipped her tomahawk from its sheath. Not sure that's a good idea. O'Connor bent over the woman with a stethoscope in his ears, listening to her chest. Remove the monitoring equipment from her. Randy hurried to the other side of the bed and removed the blood pressure cuff from the old lady's arm. O'Connor straightened with a smile. I do believe we've done it. The old lady's yellow eyes shot open and fixed on O'Connor. Chapter 6. The zombie rolled off the table and landed cat-like on the floor. Jen grabbed O'Connor by the collar and yanked him behind her. Randy turned to run, but the zombie sprung onto his back, knocking him to the floor. Jen shoved O'Connor at Zeke and reared the tomahawk over her head. She brought it in a wide overhead arc and drilled the point into the old lady's skull. The zombie slumped, and Jen pulled her off Randy. Randy's lab coat was torn and bloodied. Is that his blood or the zombie's? He scrambled to his feet, breathing harshly, and bent over with a hand on his back. Are you bit? Jen yelled. He shook his head. I've got a bad back, and the test subject just made it worse, but I'll be okay. Jen! Zeke held O'Connor on his feet outside the cage. The doctor's head sagged. Jen pointed the tomahawk at Randy. Stay where you are. What do you mean? I just told you I'm okay. Jen backed out of the cage, shut the door, and locked it. No time to argue. If you still have those baby blues in a half hour, then I'll let you out. Let me the hell out of here now! The lab tech rattled the cage door. Jen sheathed the tomahawk and put an arm around O'Connor. Let's get him in his lab. The cage zombies continued with their racket. That shit's getting old. I'm with Zeke. We should drop them. Wait. Randy stood at the cage door. He's got a heart condition. There are pills in his bottom right-hand desk drawer. Keys are in his pocket. Zeke held the lab door open while Jen walked O'Connor inside and lowered him to the floor. O'Connor's complexion had gone pale and his breathing shallow. Call for help, she said. Zeke closed the lab door, then picked up a phone and pressed a button. Seconds later, he said, Emergency in Dr. O'Connor's lab. He doesn't look well. He paused. Right. Jen rummaged through O'Connor's pockets and pulled out a ring of keys. She rushed to the desk and tried one. It didn't turn. Damn it. The next key she tried didn't fit. She glanced at O'Connor. Zeke hovered over him. Is he still breathing? She asked. Zeke's eyebrows knitted. Barely. Jen picked a small worn key and shoved it into the lock. She turned it and jerked the drawer open. Hanging files took up most of the drawer, but a small prescription bottle lay in the front. She snatched it up and ran back to O'Connor. Zeke had folded up a lab coat and placed it underneath his head. Jen opened the bottle and shook out 2 pills. Need water. Zeke dashed to a water cooler and returned seconds later with a cup. Hold his head up, Jen said. She placed the 2 pills in O'Connor's mouth and tipped the cup to his lips. Come on, doctor. This'll make you feel a lot better. The lab door burst open and 2 emergency medical technicians rushed in. Jen backed away next to Zeke. The EMTs took O'Connor's vitals, then placed him on a wheeled gurney and rolled him out the door, the growls of the cage zombies filtering into the lab. Jen sank into the chair at O'Connor's desk and leaned back. Guess that vaccine didn't work. Zeke poured himself a cup of water. But it delayed the change. Maybe O'Connor's on the right track. Jen grunted in agreement. How much time do they have to get it right? She opened the drawer she'd found the pills in and replaced them. A name on a file folder tab caught her attention, and she pulled it up. In scrawling handwriting, the tab had Dr. Jeffrey Morgan, Project Svengali, written on it. She pried the folder open. It contained a half-inch thick stack of papers. The first was a progress report from Morgan on CDC letterhead. What the hell? That asshole actually worked here? Why didn't Cartwright tell me? The lab door opened and Rodriguez and Daniel strode in. Dr. Cartwright wants to see you. Jen eased the drawer closed with her foot and pocketed O'Connor's keys. She pushed past the agents and out the door. Were the human experiments Morgan was charged with performed here, as part of Project Svengali? Zeke nudged her and pointed to Randy's cage. The lab tech stood at the cage door watching them with his arms folded. Think I can get out now? Jen strode up to the cage and looked him in the eye. No yellow. Looks like you're clean. Zeke opened the door and Randy stepped out. How's Dr. O'Connor? Jen shrugged. We gave him the pills and the EMTs took him away. They didn't tell us squat. Randy ran a hand through his hair. I came here to work with Dr. O'Connor. He's had these attacks a few times before, and each one seems to be worse. He thrust out his hand to Jen. Thanks for being so quick to help him out. Jen shook his hand. He'll be okay. I hope so. Randy shook hands with Zeke, then trudged toward the lab, stopping at the door. I owe you one, he said and disappeared into the lab. Cartwright stood behind her desk, staring out the window when Jen walked in. The doctor broke her trance and sat, then waved Rodriguez and Daniels away. Dr. O'Connor is stable for now. Please tell me what happened. He gave the old lady the vaccine, waited 10 minutes, then pulled the plug, Jen said. She died and didn't come back within 2 minutes, so Dr. O'Connor assumed she wasn't coming back at all. Zeke sat on the couch. Dr. O'Connor went in to check her out, and she popped up like a jack-in-the-box. Jen pushed the doctor through the cell door to me and took care of the zombie. Dr. O'Connor's face had paled and he couldn't stand on his own. We got him in the lab and gave him his pills, Jen said. Before we knew it, the EMTs were there. Cartwright steepled her fingers. 2 minutes? We're getting closer. She slammed a fist on her desk. But not close enough. She leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. We're running out of time. It's not that bad, is it? Jen asked. When the outbreak started in Alaska, we had time to rally the troops and most of the rest of the states, Cartwright said. Thanks to you and Doc, we had information up front on how the zombies behaved and how best to kill them. And on top of that, we had troops deployed to most larger cities to avoid major outbreaks. Cartwright sighed. But with all the federal and National Guard troops now on the front lines, we're entrusting local law enforcement and civilian militias. Training videos on how to spot and suppress outbreaks and how to fight the zombies are playing constantly on TV stations, cable stations, and the internet. Despite this, more and more incidents are occurring. I fear we're on borrowed time. Zeke moved closer to Cartwright's desk, a definite gleam in his eyes. Sounds like we should get out there and kick some zombie ass. Cartwright shook her head. Not a chance. I need Jen here until we have a vaccine. I'm betting the mammals are causing the outbreaks, Jen said. Quite probable, Cartwright said. Zeke cracked his neck. We've seen zombie dogs. And a moose, Jen added. Zeke's mouth dropped open. Really? I would have loved to have seen that. Cartwright plopped her open hand on the desk, a ring on her middle finger making a loud noise. Jen and Zeke looked at her. We've quarantined all pets, Cartwright said. But how many squirrels die in a day? Skunks, beavers. Shit. It only takes one, Jen said. Exactly, Cartwright said. That's why perfecting the serum is so critical. Dr. O'Connor believes that once he perfects it, he can make it deliverable by spraying from the air. That'll immunize the wildlife as well as humans. The military will send back aircraft to undertake that mission when we're ready. Agent Rodriguez hurried into the room. What is it? Cartwright asked. Rodriguez glanced at Jen and Zeke. That task you gave me this morning, I have an update. Cartwright stood. Would you two excuse us, please? I'll let you know if there's any news. Jen led Zeke into the reception area. Rodriguez closed the door behind them. Cindy walked in. Her pantsuit looked like it had been ironed only moments before. Is there anything I can help you with? We're good, Jen said, as she continued into the hallway. Zeke followed her onto the elevator. Where are we going? Outside, she said. I need some air. Starting to get claustrophobic in here. Jen pressed the L button, and the elevator door slid closed. I need to tell Zeke what I found out about Morgan, but not here, once we're away from the buildings and any interruptions. The elevator slowed and stopped. The floor indicator showed they were at the 5th floor. The doors opened and a crowd of screaming CDC employees pressed inside. What the hell? Jen yelled. A woman with wild eyes shrank against the elevator wall. Hurry! Close the doors before the zombies get in! Chapter 7. The crowd pinned Jen to the wall of the elevator. Out of my way! She screamed. She squirmed and pushed off the wall, but didn't go anywhere. Zeke, we need to get out. Over here, he yelled. He'd been trapped in a corner by the panicked mass. Even as skinny as he wasn't able to squeeze out. He raised an arm above his head. Jen noticed the gun in his hand just before he pulled the trigger. The discharge was explosive in the tight confines of the elevator, and the babbling group of employees was stunned into a momentary silence. Get off this fucking elevator and let us out or we start shooting, Jen bellowed. The employees blocking the entrance piled out, and Jen muscled a man in a cheap suit aside. She broke into the corridor, where a swell of humanity pressed back into the elevator as it complained with an ear-splitting buzz. The doors closed on 3 people still trying to get inside. Jen pulled a younger man back. There isn't room. He swung his fist at her face and she ducked. His momentum threw him into a tech, who pushed him off. Zeke pulled the other 2 people from the elevator doorway and the door slid shut. Now look what you did, a gray-haired woman with thick glasses shouted. Tears streamed down her face. Jen pulled her pistol and raised it into the air. Zeke followed suit. The crowd quieted. Homeland Security agents. Jen said. Zeke pulled his badge and raised it next to his gun. He had an odd grin on his face and his eyes gleamed. Little shit's having a ball. Jen lowered the gun. I want 2 answers, and I want them fast. Which way are the zombies, and how many of them are there? A woman in a nurse's uniform pointed down the hall. Medical wing. I saw at least 8, but there are a lot of people missing. They may have been bitten. Jen removed the tomahawk from its holster. I suggest the rest of you find the damn stairs instead of waiting around here. Now, out of our way. The crowd parted, and Jen and Zeke hurried down the hallway. When Jen glanced back, everyone had disappeared. Good. Fewer people we have to worry about becoming zombies. The tactical tomahawk was much lighter than the axe she'd previously had, but she'd seen Griffin tear zombies apart with his. I'll just have to get used to it fast. She stopped at the end of the hall and Zeke peered around the corner, his katana ready to strike. Nothing. Jen stepped into the corridor. A nurse's station stood empty, but an overturned cart of food and paper scattered across the tile floor told her the zombies had been through. Blood streaks decorated the walls like some gruesome avant-garde art. A dripping sound came from the station, slow and heavy. Drip, drip, drip. Jen motioned Zeke to take the far wall, and she huddled against the near one. She took a step and listened. Another step and waited. Jen and Zeke were in tune. As much as they'd faced together the previous few weeks, they'd learned each other's tendencies and had become a dangerous team. Zeke motioned to the right. Jen nodded. They reached the station. Corridors went off in 4 directions from the nurse's station. A set of double doors was closed on one, but the others were propped open. The constant dripping grated on Jen's nerves. Jen stepped behind the counter and stopped. Blood pooled around a half-eaten heart on a shelf. It ran down the side until it ran out of shelving and dripped steadily on an upturned bedpan. Jen took a towel lying on the floor and tossed it over the bedpan. The dripping continued, but much quieter. Which way? Zeke asked. Jen considered the corridors. No use going into the closed one. But which of the other 3? Wish I knew the layout. Something flashed down the corridor on her left. Her peripheral vision picked it up, but it had disappeared by the time her eyes had snapped that way. Zeke looked in that direction too. As good a choice as any. Jen entered the corridor. Zeke took the opposite side of the hallway, and together they made their way down the hall. The doors they passed were solid, with no windows and all closed. Jen opened the first one she came to. Baskets of laundry crowded the room, but there were no signs of anything, living or dead. A clattering came from an intersection ahead. Something metallic hit the floor and spun, making a racket. Jen put a finger to her lips and motioned Zeke to move ahead with her. She reached the intersection and scanned both ways down the corridor. A pan, like the type used to hold surgical instruments, lay on the floor several feet away. We're getting too deep in here, Jen said. If there were zombies down here, they should have attacked by now. O'Connor stepped into view at the next intersection, his glasses gone and his mouth stained red. He glared at Jen. So that's how this shit started. Jen sprinted toward him and O'Connor darted out of sight. Wait for me, Zeke yelled. Double doors on Jen's right burst open as she passed them, and 24 zombies spilled into the hallway between her and Zeke, who skidded to a halt and took a defensive position. 5 of the zombies turned toward Jen. She gave the tomahawk a hefty swing at the first one, but its light weight threw off her timing, and the blade zipped inches from the creature's face. Shit. She pulled her pistol and dropped the zombie with a shot to the forehead. More zombies flowed from other doors. Zeke, run! Jen took off the other way down the hall and around a corner. She had 10 yards of corridor before it became a dead end. Are you shitting me? The last door on the left stood open. Jen sprinted through it, slammed the door shut and locked the large deadbolt. Zombie fists pounded on it, but the thick wood barely shuddered. I'll be safe in here. She turned to survey the room and her mouth went dry. O'Connor stood in a corner several feet away, his yellow gaze fixed on her. Jen aimed the handgun at O'Connor's nose. Sorry, Doctor. Consider this your termination notice." O'Connor continued to stare, like the zombies downstairs. Jen lowered the gun just enough for a better view of the undead doctor. She stepped to the right, and O'Connor's eyes followed her. She moved to the left, and he never broke eye contact. "What the hell's going on?" she asked. O'Connor tilted his head back like he was going to let loose with a screech. But he swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. He lowered his chin and reconnected his gaze with Jen. A drop of sweat rolled down her cheek. This is something new. Are they evolving again? O'Connor's mouth opened, then closed. Damn thing looks like he's trying to talk. Entranced, Jen lowered the pistol to her side. "What are you trying to say?" The doctor's jaw worked up and down. He looked like a fish out of water struggling for a breath. "Jen!" The blood rushed from Jen's face. Did he just say? O'Connor shook his head like a dog with a toy. He glared at her. "Jen!" "You're telling me these fucking things are going to start talking now? Are you saying my name? Jen?" O'Connor's head jerked forward, then back. Jen gasped. "What the hell?" Muffled gunshots came from the distance, getting closer. Jen took a step toward O'Connor. "Dr. O'Connor? Is that you?" O'Connor's head jerked to one side, and then to the other. Jen took a deep breath. Her pulse raced and a rock settled in the pit of her stomach as an unbelievable thought rose in her mind. It can't be. Butler? The corners of O'Connor's mouth pulled back in a grotesque leer. Chapter 8. Jen raised the pistol, her hand shaking. "I'm going to find you and enjoy killing you again, you son of a bitch." The blast of a gun came from just outside the door. O'Connor raised his arms in a surrender gesture. "How are you going to surrender when you're not really here?" Jen aimed at his forehead. "Help," O'Connor grunted. Jen licked her lips. How did I get stuck talking to a dead man who's talking through a dead man? Why the hell would I help you? O'Connor's mouth worked, but no sound came out. The door burst open, and 3 security officers rushed in, their handguns cocked and ready. The largest stepped in front of Jen and fired. "Hey," she said, "I can take care of myself." She pushed the security officer to the side. O'Connor lay flopped over a chair, the top of his skull missing. Shit, now I'll never find out what the hell is going on. Jen spun. "Who asked you to do that?" She looked up into Mark Colton's soft brown eyes. He smiled. "You're welcome." "Why'd you kill him?" she asked, his brow furrowed. What? What else do you do with a zombie?" She bit her lip. "Shut up, Jen." She shook her head. "Think I banged my head on the wall when you shoved me. I'm all right now." "You should have someone look at that," Mark said. Jen gave him a half smile. "Like I said, I'm fine. Besides, looks like the medical department's become a bit short-staffed." A security officer with her blonde hair in a bun approached. "Chief, looks like we're clean." "I want all security personnel not on perimeter duty to clear every room and every building on the campus. Start with this one," Mark said. The security officer nodded and rushed out of the room, barking instructions on a radio. Zeke jogged into the room, relief flooding his blood-specked face when his eyes met Jen's. "There you are," he said. Jen pulled his lanky frame into a bear hug. "I don't know why zombies go after you. You wouldn't even make a quick snack." Zeke gave her an awkward pat on the back and stepped back. "Except for worrying about you. That was a hell of a lot of fun for me and Crusher." "Crusher?" Jen said. "As names go, it's better than Betty. But your katana slices. Wouldn't Crusher be a better name for a mace or a bat?" "It's named after a character on TNG," Zeke said. "TNG?" "Star Trek, Next Generation." Zeke beamed. "Wesley Crusher." Jen sighed. "If nerdism was a superpower, you'd rule the world." Mark rolled his eyes. "Let's get you two somewhere safe." 2 hours later, Jen and Zeke walked into Dr. Cartwright's reception area. Cindy looked up from her computer. Go right in. Without waiting for an acknowledgement, she went back to work. O'Connor's assistant, Randy, leaned forward in a chair in front of Cartwright's desk, while the doctor faced a large monitor with a split screen. On one side was Hal's somber face, and on the other was a young woman about Jen's age. She wore wire-framed glasses and sported short, frosted hair. Cartwright glanced over her shoulder. Good timing. Have a seat. She gestured to the empty seats in front of her desk. Turning back to the monitor, she said, Sergeant, I need a transport aircraft immediately. This is a matter of the highest national security. That's what I told the general, ma'am, but he shot me down. There's a fierce battle in Boise and all transport aircraft are needed there. Jen took her seat. I hate coming in on the middle of conversations. What do we need the plane for? She asked. The woman on the screen said, Is this Jen? Cartwright nodded and pointed at the screen. Jen, this is Dr. Preston. Donna, this is Jen Reed. Donna offered a petite smile. Good to meet you, Jen. Pleasure, Jen said. What do we need the plane for? To bring Donna here, Cartwright said. She works in a CDC-affiliated lab in Boston and is our next best option after Dr. O'Connor. I thought the train ran to Boston, Zeke said. Why can't she take that? Donna rolled back from the screen so her wheelchair was in view. Before the disaster, I would have had no problem taking the train, she said. But now that it's the sole method of mass transportation, it's filled to capacity, which makes it very difficult to navigate in my chair. Howell looked off camera. Be right there. He turned to the screen. Boise is critical, and there's been another major attack. This time it's Phoenix. He disappeared from the monitor, and Donna's face filled it. Can't Randy work on it here? Jen asked. He worked with O'Connor. Randy scoffed. That's like asking an operating room nurse to perform brain surgery. Clearly, that's not our best option, Cartwright said. She adjusted her glasses and looked at the ceiling. We're out of best options, and now we're down to the best of the worst. Donna, she said, if we can't get you down to our lab, we'll get our lab to you. Randy frowned. So I'm going to Boston? Not sure that's a safe trip. Cartwright shot him a withering glare. Relax. We need you here in case O'Connor left any written notes that haven't been transcribed into the system. You're the only one who will know where they are. Randy's shoulders relaxed. No. Cartwright stood. I'll send the serum on the train with some agents. Serum? Zeke asked. Dr. O'Connor had 2 doses of the latest iteration of his serum, Donna said. He used one in his last experiment. But it didn't work, Jen said. So why do you want it? It's the result of all his research, Donna said. And I don't want to start from scratch if I can help it. Fine, Cartwright said. I'll have 2 agents leave on tomorrow's train with the serum. Donna stared from the screen. As long as one of those agents is Jen. What? Jen said. Cartwright scowled. I need Jen here. And Dr. O'Connor's lab notes are adamant that a component of Jen's blood is essential for the serum, Donna said. I don't know how much I'll need. So the human pincushion needs to go along with the serum. Jen leaned back in the chair. Great. And it'll get me farther away from Butler. Cartwright stared at the wall, and uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Cartwright turned back to the monitor. I don't like this at all, but I don't see another solution. At least not unless the military would shake some air transport loose. Zeke jumped to his feet. I go where Jen goes. Jen smiled. My hero. Cartwright sighed. We'll set it up on this end. I'll send you the specifics. Donna nodded. Looking forward to it. And looking forward to meeting you, Jen. Jen waved at the camera. Same here. How about some of that famous clam chowder when we get there? You've got it. The monitor went blank. Cartwright swiveled the chair around. Things are getting dicey out there, even on the East Coast. I thought the protocols were keeping things under control, Zeke asked. Go ask O'Connor how well that's turning out, Jen said. Cartwright stood. You'll leave on tomorrow morning's train. Jen will carry the serum, and Agents Rodriguez and Daniels will accompany you. My brother's heading home on that train, Zeke said. Can he travel with us? I think that's a great idea, Jen interjected. Zeke and Cartwright looked at her. Cartwright's eyebrows were raised. Jen shrugged. Safety in numbers, right? Very well. Have him report with you to the armory to be equipped for the trip. Then muster outside the front entrance of this building by 6 a.m. Zeke smiled. Back into action. Cartwright frowned. Let's hope there's not too much of that. Chapter 9. Jen yawned as the SUV wound through the Atlanta streets the next morning. She felt the pouch threaded onto her belt for the 100th time. She unzipped it and pulled out the stoppered syringe. Can't believe this freaking thing is humanity's last hope. She returned it, making sure the padding inside was wrapped completely around it. They'd passed only a few pedestrians and bicyclists, and even fewer vehicles. It had rained overnight, and the sun baked the streets, evaporating the puddles. I'll be glad to get out of this freaking humidity. Jen pulled her shirt away from her chest. Where are all the people? Zeke asked. It's like a ghost town. Agent Rodriguez glanced at him from the front passenger seat. It's getting worse every day. He cracked his neck. A week ago, we'd had our first major outbreak in Atlanta, but now there are several every day. We had a couple in Providence, Wayne said, but the rest of Rhode Island has been pretty calm. Zeke examined the cell phone he'd been given at the armory. No social media. No games. How can they call this a phone? It's for calls only, Wayne said. He sat between Jen and Zeke, and his shoulder kept rubbing Jen's as the vehicle bounced over uneven roads. Jen pulled her phone out. In a hardened case, it was pre-programmed with numbers for Cartwright, Howell, and everyone in the SUV. She wrapped her knuckles on the case. Could run this thing over with the tank and not hurt it. The SUV swerved and Jen pressed into Wayne. She pulled back and murmured, "Sorry." Wayne gave her a smile. "No worries." "Stop it, Jen. You've got a job to do. Don't start getting all gooey like in a bad novel. There's still an apocalypse going on." A breeze caught discarded papers, and they flew down the empty street. "Doesn't look like there's anyone left in the city," Wayne said. "Everyone's holed up in their houses," Daniel said. The SUV swung around a curve, and Jen held onto the door handle to keep from tumbling into Wayne again. 2 blocks ahead, a crowd filled the street. "Looks like we found the party," she said. "Shit," Rodriguez said. "Everyone stay close to me when we get out. We'll have to get through that mess." Jen frowned. "I'm not comfortable with crowds right now." Daniels looked at Rodriguez. "They're all trying to get on the train. It's the only reliable long-distance transportation unless you walk or bike." Rodriguez put a hand on the SUV driver's arm. "Stop here, Stan." The vehicle pulled to the curb. The crowd's edge lay 100 feet ahead. Rodriguez turned to the others. "There's no time to be polite. We'll have to bull through. I'll lead and Daniels will take the rear. Stay with us and have your badges out when we get to the train." "I don't have a badge," Wayne said. "Stick close. We'll get you in," Daniel said. Jen lined up behind Rodriguez, followed by Zeke and Wayne. Daniels called out from behind her. "Ready." Rodriguez stepped into the milling crowd, holding his badge up. "Excuse me. Homeland Security, let us pass." Jen stayed on his ass as he wove through the mass of humanity. Halfway there, she glanced over her shoulder and was reassured that the others still followed close behind. A woman's scream came from the top of the wide, gradual steps leading into the terminal. Yelling and cursing followed, and the crowd converged on the spot, jostling and shoving. A fight broke out. Someone slammed into Jen from her left, and she stumbled, but managed to stay upright. "Don't let her fall in this mess," Rodriguez yelled over his shoulder. "We're gonna have to take a detour. This way." He pushed to the left, and Jen glimpsed the crowd 10 yards ahead. The people appeared calmer. The fighting spilled down the steps like a wave, washing over the mass of hot, sweaty Atlantans. Rammed again, Jen was shoved into a tall, beefy man who glared at her. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward him. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "You'll find out when I knee your balls up into your throat," Jen said. She tried to follow through on the threat, but the mob was pressed so close together she had no room to act. Someone grabbed her other arm. Jen glanced over. Wayne had stretched out and clenched her upper arm. Zeke peered at her over his shoulder. He reached back and pulled his katana, but he might as well have left it in its scabbard for all the good he could do with it. The beefy man wrapped one ham-sized hand around Jen's throat. "Just 'cause your government doesn't make you special." Jen choked and tried again to knee the asshole, but she was immobilized by the bodies pressing in on her. Dots speckled her vision as she struggled to breathe. "Jen!" Zeke yelled. An explosion came from nearby, and the hand released her. Jen's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground, her lungs heaving for air. Wayne lifted her to her feet. "Come on." Everyone outside the station had hit the ground, except the agents, Wayne, Zeke, and Jen. Daniel stood with his gun pointed into the air. The beefy man stood and pulled a handgun from the small of his back. Rodriguez and Daniels put 3 bullets each in him before he dropped. Zeke drew his katana and stepped over cowering civilians. "Can't let him turn." The beefy man grabbed a young woman's arm and clamped it in his jaw. She screamed, and a 2-year-old girl at her side cried. Jen stepped on people to get to the child and snatched her up. Zeke sliced halfway through the beefy man's neck, but not before he'd bitten 2 more people. The crowd panicked and fled for the street. Zeke lopped off the beefy man's head with his next stroke, and Wayne took position next to him with his bat. A teen zombie rushed him and he swung, but his timing was off, and the zombie crashed into him, knocking him to the ground. A well-placed bullet from Agent Daniels exploded out the back of the teen zombie's head. "We can't stay here to help. Our mission is too important." With the toddler in one arm and her pistol in the other, Jen shot one of the yellow-eyed monsters sizing Wayne up. The baby screamed, tears pouring down its cheeks. "He's right," she yelled. "Zeke, Wayne, I need you with me." The brothers backed toward her. Zombies sprung on humans in panicked flight. Shots came from the terminal. Militia members stood in the doorways firing. Jen followed Rodriguez as he dashed toward the terminal. Chaos reigned. A few gunshots boomed within the crowd, but they were quickly silenced. The path up the terminal steps cleared as the mob rushed for the streets. Rodriguez bull-rushed up the steps and slammed into a thin, middle-aged man with luminescent yellow eyes, knocking him to the side. Jen sidestepped a zombie and its throatless victim and ducked through the terminal door behind Rodriguez. The train's doors were still open, but a line of armed men in police uniforms and civilian clothes blocked the only way through a makeshift fence. Panicked people pushed against it, threatening to knock it down. Daniel zipped past the others, his badge held high. "Homeland Security, we need to get on this train." The first of the zombies entered the terminal and clamped its teeth on an older man's shoulder. The crowd inside surged away from them, and many rushed the side entrances in a desperate attempt to escape. "Path is clear," Rodriguez yelled. Jen hugged the child tightly and sprinted for the gate. Several rifles pointed at the group as they made the gate. Rodriguez and Daniel shoved their badges against the chain links. "Homeland Security," Rodriguez said. "We have to be on that train." A state trooper jogged over and glanced at the badges. "Let him in." A man in camis with no insignia lifted the latch and opened the gate. More zombies surged through the doors. The men protecting the train opened fire. Jen cringed. The explosive sounds echoed off the walls. Civilians behind the fence were lined up to enter the train. Rodriguez barreled through them, and Jen panted, trying to keep up. The guard at the head of the line looked up as they approached. "Back in line." Rodriguez showed his badge. "We're going on. You have 30 seconds to get as many of these people as you can on board, and then this train is leaving." Jen pushed past the guard and ran into the first car. A few startled passengers looked up. "When are we going?" asked a 30-something woman with short platinum blonde hair and a Georgia twang. Jen took a seat. The child, a girl, kept her face buried into Jen's shoulder. Zeke and Wayne hopped on and took positions at the door. Both had their rifles aimed toward the gate. Zeke fired. Wayne glanced at him. "Now?" he asked. "You don't wait for orcs to be slicing you up before you start swinging your sword," Zeke yelled. Rodriguez zipped into the car, his eyes searching for something. Daniels backed into the car, his pistol out and firing. They're breaching the damn fence. Got to help. Jen tried to lower the child to the seat, but she whimpered and clamped her arms around Jen's neck. 3 figures darted into the car just as the doors closed. One barreled into Zeke, knocking him to the floor. Another attacked the platinum blonde, and the third landed face down in the aisle next to Jen. The zombie in the aisle sprung to its feet and gaped at Jen and the girl with its hungry yellow eyes. Chapter 10. The zombie on top of Zeke was almost a mirror image of him. Its hair, half dyed in blue and half in red, made its yellow eyes seem almost stylish. Jen pulled the little girl's arms from her neck and pushed her away from the aisle. The zombie from the aisle hit Jen full force before she could fire. Her gun hand flung back, slamming into the wall. Pain exploded in her wrist and the gun dropped to the floor. Jen held the zombie back with the forearm across the throat, but the barrel-chested man was bigger and heavier than her. He snapped his jaws and lunged at the same time. She kneed him in the crotch as hard as she could, and the zombie lunged again. Damn, they don't feel that? A hand grasped the zombie's shoulder and spun it around. Wrist throbbing, Jen fished her tomahawk from its sheath. Wayne had the zombie by the shirt and reared back with the bat. But the zombie was too fast and tackled him onto the seat across the aisle. Wayne shoved the bat handle into the zombie's mouth, but it didn't let up. Jen glanced to make sure the girl was all right, then brought the pointed end of the tomahawk down toward the back of the zombie's head. It moved at the last second, and the point ended up buried in its shoulder. Shit. Jen yanked the weapon from its shoulder and swung again, planting the point firmly in the creature's skull. It collapsed on top of Wayne. Zeke still wrestled with his attacker. Its teeth were inches from sinking into his throat, and his arms trembled with the strain of holding it back. He's not going to last. The platinum blonde had turned and tore a chunk of meat from a teenage boy's arm before turning and leering at the little girl. Shit, Zeke's about to bite it, but I can't let that monster bite the girl either. Jen grabbed the barrel-chested zombie and yanked it off Wayne. Help Zeke! Without waiting for an answer, she spun, bringing the tomahawk overhead and sliced the platinum blonde's arm. Less than a foot from the girl, the blonde turned and hissed at Jen. Pandemonium broke out in the front of the car as the teenage boy turned and attacked several other passengers. This shit's getting out of hand. Jen lowered her shoulder and rammed the platinum blonde to the side. It stumbled, then leaped. Jen ducked and straightened as the zombie landed on her. She catapulted the blonde into the wall, where it fell to the floor, stunned. The little girl shrank against the wall between the seats. A quick glance toward Zeke showed Wayne knocking the snot out of the zombie's skull with the bat. Jen fell upon the blonde and chopped at its head with the blade. Once, twice, 3 times, her lungs burned with the effort. Blood splattered in her eyes, and she stepped back and wiped them with her sleeves. The blonde lay in an unmoving heap. Rodriguez ran to the other end of the car and picked up a phone cradled on the wall. "Engineer, this is Agent Rodriguez of Homeland Security. You are ordered to get us the hell out of here." A man slammed into the outside of the door, his eyes wide in panic. He clawed the edge, straining to pull on it. It took a second for Jen to recognize the state trooper. A large woman in a torn and bloody floral print dress grabbed him from behind. She twisted his head and sank her teeth into his cheek. Blood sprayed the glass on the car door as she ripped flesh and muscle from the trooper. "Start this fucking thing now!" Rodriguez screamed into the phone. The train jerked, almost knocking Rodriguez off his feet, and it slowly made its way down the track. The platform was blood-splattered carnage. No one was left alive. Dozens of zombies rushed the train but fell away as it pulled out of the station. Jen lifted the girl onto the seat and let her wrap her arms around her neck again. Zeke and Wayne sat on the floor in the corner and leaned against the wall, catching their breath. The bloody remnants of their zombie lay in front of them. Daniel stood over the third zombie, a bullet wound in its temple. Of the 6 passengers that were already in the train car when Jen arrived, only 2 still breathed. One, a boy barely in his teens, stood in the corner with glassy eyes and a trembling lip. Across from him, a burly guy in biker colors and a porn star mustache stood over 2 dead zombies. Blood dripped from a machete he held. He cracked his neck. "Don't usually get my workout so early in the morning." Zeke stood and stepped over bodies to get to the biker. He held out a fist for the biker to bump. "I'm feeling ya. My name's Zeke and I'm a ninja." Biker guy glared at Zeke from beneath bushy brows, his grip tightening on the machete handle. Zeke lowered his arm and backed away. "We're cool." Rodriguez sat on a bloodied seat and talked on the phone. "Who's he talking to?" Jen asked. Daniels wiped his hands on his suit coat. "Cartwright." Wayne pushed past Daniels and approached the boy. "You okay, buddy?" The boy remained quiet. Wayne took a knee in front of the boy. "I'm Wayne. What's your name?" The boy's gaze rose to meet Wayne's. "Jamarcus?" He pointed to a 30-something man sprawled at Biker Guy's feet. "That's Uncle Floyd." Biker Guy licked his lips and moved away from the body. "I'm sorry about your uncle," Wayne said. Not only hot, but Wayne's a saint, too? I feel like I'm stuck in the Hallmark movie from hell. Jen's heart ached for the boy. Rodriguez snapped his phone shut and stood. "Listen up. Cartwright's getting resources in New York to meet us when we stop. They'll quarantine the train and go through it car by car, but we'll be the first car." "Who's Cartwright?" Biker Guy asked. "For that matter, who are you suits?" "Homeland Security agents," Jen said. "All of us. And Cartwright's someone who can get shit done." Biker Guy eyed her up and down, as if he'd just noticed her. "I'll vouch for you," Jen said. "You'll get out of here with us." Daniel's eyebrows rose, and he exchanged a glance with Rodriguez, who shrugged. Biker Guy nodded. "You're a hell of a fighter. What's your name?" "Jen. Jen Reed. And yours?" "Call me D-Day." Zeke smiled. "That's so cool. I want a name like that." "D-Day?" Jen asked. D-Day wiped a smear of blood off his forehead. "Did I stutter?" He grunted and sat on a dry section of seat, facing away from the others. "Guess he's done talking." Jen checked the serum. Still there, still intact. She sat next to the girl the rest of the way to New York City. She never said a word, even though Jen tried to get her name. The train rolled into the station. Armed law enforcement lined the platform, while a set of armed men in civilian clothes, each wearing a red armband, stood in a group to the side. Militia, there has to be 100 of them. When the train stopped, the militia members disappeared toward the rear cars. A squad of armed men dressed in black with helmets and vests approached their car, their rifles up and ready. Rodriguez stood at the door and pressed his badge to it. "Agent Rodriguez!" he yelled through the glass. The SWAT leader spoke into a mic clipped to his shoulder, and a few seconds later, the door whooshed open. Rodriguez stumbled back as the squad rushed the car. Calls of "all clear" came from the SWAT members as they fanned out in the car. A man in a blue jacket with the letters FBI on it stepped in. "Agent Rodriguez?" Rodriguez raised his hand, then pointed at Daniels. "Agent Daniels." The FBI agent nodded. "I'm Hess. All the rest are with you?" "All except the kids and the biker," Rodriguez said. Hess stepped out the door and waved another agent over. "Get these kids to DCS." The little girl clutched Jen's neck so tight she coughed. Prying the girl's arms away, Jen said, "Come on, honey. These people will take care of you." Tears rolled down the girl's face as the agent took her. She screamed, "I want to stay with you. I want to be safe." Jen swallowed and dropped her gaze to the floor. "I'm the last person to be around if you want to be safe." Chapter 11. Hess led them to another platform, where a line of people waited to board a train. "This looks a lot more organized than Atlanta," Jen said. Hess nodded. "We have a ton of people wanting to get on, but we pre-process them a couple of blocks away. Only those who are boarding are allowed in the station." He walked right up the line to the front, where a couple of militiamen with red armbands stood, cradling AK-47-style guns. "National security," he said. "These folks go on first." One of the militiamen eyed D-Day. "The big guy doesn't look government to me." D-Day stared the guy down and cracked his knuckles. "He's with us," Rodriguez said. "There's a surprise." Rodriguez gave Jen a slight nod. "We can't fit him in this car," Hess said, "but we'll get him a seat a few cars back." He called a militiaman over and pointed at D-Day. Get the big guy in the closest car to number 1 that you can." "Yes, sir." The militiaman led D-Day farther down the line of cars. An older couple stood at the front of the line. The lady was shooting daggers at the group with her eyes. "We paid to be here," she said. "It's a shame some people don't know their place." "This bitch would make a good zombie." One of the militiamen guarding the train pointed to the first car. "Go on in," he said to Rodriguez. Rodriguez waved them on. Zeke pushed past the old couple and gave the lady one of his patented silly grins. She scowled. They entered the car and Jen plopped onto the back seat and adjusted the serum bag on her belt. Zeke went to sit next to her, but Wayne slipped in first. Zeke frowned and took the seat in front of them. He turned around, his arm on the back of the seat. "Do you think we'll see some action up north?" Jen sighed. "I hope not. Shit's stressful enough as it is. I wish I knew how it's going on the front." Zeke shrugged. "Call Hal." "Hal?" Wayne asked. "He's our contact at the Pentagon," Jen said. "He'll give us the straight poop." Rodriguez and Daniels took seats on either side of the aisle in the middle of the car. They leaned across the aisle and spoke in low tones. "Are you gonna call him?" Wayne asked. Jen broke from her thoughts. "Who?" "Howell," Zeke said. "We were just talking about him." "Oh, yeah." Jen pulled her cell phone from her pants pocket and flipped it open. She scrolled down the list of pre-programmed contacts. All the members of the team were listed as well as Cartwright, Mark, and Howell. She highlighted Howell's name and pressed the call button. It rang on the other end. A click, then, "Howell here." "Sergeant Howell, it's Jen." "Jen, I heard you had a hard time getting out of Atlanta." Jen laughed. "Nothing compared to making our exit from Spokane." "I heard that," Howell said. His voice became serious. "I've got a ton of shit going on here. What can I do for you?" Jen swallowed. "What are we headed into?" "In Boston? Big city with some small outbreaks here and there, but they've been keeping the lid on it." "That wasn't a small outbreak in Atlanta," Jen said. "I saw how it started, and it spread faster than Big Bertha's ass at an all-you-can-eat buffet. I don't want to imagine it happening like that elsewhere." Howell didn't answer. "Howell? You still there?" His voice lowered. "I'm seeing that same pattern. I know the brass are worried about it, but they can't break any forces off to go back east and deal with it. Did you know Boise and Las Vegas fell?" "Shit. But what if we have an outbreak here that can't be put down?" "Then we're lost," Hal said. Jen frowned. "If I didn't know Hal, I'd think he's losing hope. I'll get this serum where it's supposed to go, and we'll shut this shit down before it gets too bad." "We're all counting on you, Jen," Hal said. "Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I have access to local law enforcement reports, satellite images, and intel reports." "Will do." "And Jen, keep me updated. Don't bother Dr. Cartwright. Call me instead." "Really?" "Okay, talk to you later." The call ended. Zeke peered at her over the back of the seat. "So what did he say?" "Hordes are still making gains out west, and there've been flare-ups in the east like what we saw in Atlanta." Zeke smiled. "More zombies to kill." Wayne raised an eyebrow. "You actually look forward to that, little brother?" Zeke turned back around. Heat rose in Jen's face. She elbowed Wayne in the side. He flinched. "What the hell?" "Your little brother saved me more times than I can count," she said. "He's trying to keep his head in the game, so don't fuck him up." Wayne gazed into her eyes, then said, "I can protect you." "Oh, great. The big testosterone-fueled man is going to protect little old me." She poked a finger in his chest. "I've killed far more zombies than you've ever seen. Maybe I should protect you." Wayne's lips pressed together and he looked away. "I said Zeke saved me," Jen said. "I didn't say he protected me. We protected each other, and so did a lot of other people. Most of them are dead." She sat back in her seat and crossed her arms. "Welcome to the real world, dude." Passengers boarded. The first were the old couple. They took the first seat on the right. The lady placed a coat-draped case between them. She glanced back and her eyes met Jen's. The old bag scowled and turned away. What's she got in that box? Gold bricks? Or maybe something more valuable, like a personality? Zeke was twisted around in his seat, facing her. can't wait to get going, but there are still empty seats." "I wonder how many seats are in this car," Jen said. 62, Zeke replied. "Now how the hell did you know that?" "I counted when we came in." A 30-something balding man with an enormous beer gut and a scowl led a mousy woman to the seat across from the old couple. "In here, honey," he said as he guided her to the seat. The woman's eyes darted back and forth. It looked like a loud cough would be enough to send her into a panic. Perfect person to be with in a zombie apocalypse. The old lady up front surveyed her fellow passengers, most dressed in casual clothes. She whispered something to her husband. "Poor rich bitch has to put it with the rabble." The doors whooshed closed, and the murmur of conversation picked up in the car. Rodriguez and Daniels broke off their conversation and sat back in their seats. A voice crackled from the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your conductor. We are about to begin our journey to Boston, Massachusetts, with stops in between. All cars are full to capacity and all seats taken, so please remain in yours. Non-essential cars have been replaced with passenger cars for maximum capacity, so there are no food and beverage services on this route." "No beer?" Beer Belly wailed. The train jerked and rumbled from the station. Breaking into daylight, it picked up speed. Jen looked out the window, squinting her eyes in the light. She jostled shoulder to shoulder with Wayne, but neither of them spoke. The train rolled through the city and picked up speed. Several passengers leaned back and closed their eyes. "This'll be a piece of cake at this rate." The conductor burst in from the next car and spoke in hushed tones to Agent Rodriguez. Rodriguez picked up the direct line to the engineer and listened. He pulled the phone from his ear and looked at the conductor, shaking his head. So much for the piece of cake. The conductor disappeared into the next car, and Jen caught Rodriguez's gaze and shrugged. Rodriguez beckoned Daniels over and whispered something to him. Daniels frowned. Jen jumped up and made a beeline to the two agents. "What's going on?" Daniels motioned for her to lower her voice. "Don't want to panic anyone." "The engineer's not answering his intercom," Rodriguez said. "Is that unusual?" Jen asked. "According to the conductor, the only time that's ever happened was when the intercom wasn't working or the engineer had a medical emergency. Since they did a successful sound check before they left, he's concerned for the engineer." "What have you got in there?" Bear Belly's booming voice filled the cab. He stood in the aisle glaring down at the old lady, who cringed away from him. Beer Belly pointed at the covered case between the old lady and the old man. "There's something alive in there." Rodriguez and Daniels exchanged a glance, and Daniels strode toward the front. Passengers craned their necks to get a view of the disruption at the front of the car. "Mind your own business," the old lady snapped. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I don't, do I?" Beer Belly lunged and grabbed the case. The older couple latched onto it like their lives depended on it. "Help!" the old lady screamed. Daniels reached Beer Belly and put a hand on his shoulder. "Let it go and sit down." Beer Belly let go of the case. "Who the hell do you think you are?" The old lady and the old man fell backward with the suddenly freed case. It slammed into the wall and fell to the floor. Jen stood to see. The coat had fallen off and exposed a plastic animal carrier with a wire frame door. The door had popped open and something inside stirred. With a deep growl, a bloodied cat with piercing yellow eyes sprung from the carrier and landed on Beer Belly's thigh. He screamed when the cat bit through his pants and shredded his leg. Chapter 12. Daniel stumbled backward and the old lady let out a wail. "My buttons! Don't hurt my fur baby!" Beer Belly swatted the cat off his leg, tripped and fell onto his seat. His wife shrank against the wall. The cat leaped onto Daniel's chest and clawed his suit. Daniels pulled his pistol and bashed the cat with the butt, knocking it to the floor where it skittered underneath a seat. Passengers pulled their legs from the floor and stood on their seats while the old lady went to her knees and crawled down the aisle. "Here, Buttons, Mommy's here." The old man stumbled, clutching his chest, then collapsed out of sight. Jen pushed past Wayne. "See if you can bash the cat." She pulled her tomahawk while Wayne picked up his bat and Zeke unsheathed his katana. "Not a lot of room in here to swing," Zeke said. Beer Belly's wife screeched as her husband pounced on her, pinning her to the wall. He clamped his teeth on her throat, and her cries died in a gurgle as he shook his head and ripped her throat out. A gunshot went off, and the back of Beer Belly's head disintegrated. He fell off the seat and sprawled on the floor. The cat sprang onto a woman's chest and bit her shoulder. Jen charged and swung at the zombie cat. It leaped onto another passenger, and Jen's blade ended up in the wounded lady's neck. Shit. The lady's cloudy eyes turned to Jen. Already turning. Jen freed the blade, twisted the handle, and slammed the pointed end into the lady's temple. She dropped to the floor. Zeke stood at the back, his katana at the ready. But he didn't attack. He's afraid of hitting someone uninfected. Beer Belly's wife jumped on a 20-something man's back and bit into the back of his neck while the old man had turned and proceeded to peel the flesh from his wife's cheek. "Daniels!" Rodriguez yelled. Daniels stood in the middle of it all, his back to Jen. He spun when his name was called, and drool spilled from his mouth as he eyed Emil. Rodriguez fired, the bullet entering Daniel's eye and spraying blood, flesh, and bone as it exited from the back of his skull. The cat jumped onto the seat in front of Jen, its gaze locked on her. A flash from the corner of her eye, and an aluminum bat slammed into the spot the cat had been a second earlier. "This shit's out of hand," Jen said. She raced to the door to the next car and grabbed the handle. Through the window, nervous passengers stood and stared at her. She jerked the door open. "In here, now!" Wayne slammed the bat into a charging zombie, hitting it in the ribs and knocking it to the side. Jen grabbed his shirt collar and yanked him off balance. "Leave it!" He stumbled into the next car and Jen followed. Zeke rushed in, and Rodriguez stood at the doorway, firing wildly. The passengers in the second car screamed and mobbed the back door. Several zombies rushed Rodriguez, one up the aisle, two more leaping from neighboring seats. Halfway through the door, he pulled the trigger and his gun clicked to empty. He stumbled backward and slammed the door, but two bloodied arms prevented it from closing all the way. The passengers bottlenecked at the back door. Jen grasped Wayne's arm and pointed at the fleeing passengers. "Help them out. We need the way clear in case we have to retreat farther. Make sure you keep the door propped open." Wayne nodded and dashed to the back of the car. Jen rushed to help Rodriguez. She chopped at one of the intruding arms, but it didn't withdraw and the door pushed wider a couple of inches. Zeke struck the best he could with the limited room, but it did little good. His teeth gritted and face red, Rodriguez strained to keep the door from flying open. "You go," he said. "We need you to make it to Boston." "You can't let this door go and get to the next car in time," Jen yelled. "I know." "We're clear." Wayne stood at the back door. The last of the passengers were already halfway through the third car. Jen pointed to Wayne. "Let's go, Zeke." Jen dashed down the aisle and through the door. She turned just as Zeke made it into the car. The door Rodriguez held had opened more than 2 feet. 2 zombies had pushed their upper bodies partially in, and more arms had snaked their way through, putting pressure on the door. Rodriguez gave a groan and collapsed. A zombie wave poured over him and into the car. Jen shut the door and it latched. Seconds later, several zombies slammed into it, smearing the window in blood. Jen turned to the others. "That's one solid-ass door." Zeke and Wayne stood halfway down the aisle battling 5 zombies. What the hell? Jen unholstered her pistol and shot at a zombie in a beanie cap, missing half its face. Rushing Wayne, it fell back as the bullet slammed into its chest, but quickly recovered. Jen grasped the pistol in both hands and took a deep breath, then held it. She squeezed the trigger, absorbing the satisfying recoil and the sight of what remained of the zombie's face collapsing around its nose. Wayne pounded the temple of another zombie with the bat, and Zeke made an abbreviated slash with the katana and left a teen goth zombie with its neck halfway severed. "Where the hell did they come from?" Jen yelled. A blur zipped from her right, and she ducked just as the zombie cat sailed over her. Son of a bitch! She holstered the pistol and yanked the tomahawk from its sheath as she scanned for the devil cat. "Where the hell did you go?" Her eyes fell on the open door to the next car. "Tell me it isn't chasing the rest of the passengers." She rushed the aisle, slashing and knocking zombies to the side. Wayne cracked the skull of a woman who collapsed back into 2 other zombies. "Keep moving," Jen yelled. "Almost there." Something grabbed her arm, and she jerked back as a heavy man with a bloodied eye socket dipped his head to take a chunk out of her. Kicking out, she connected with one of his knees. He lost his balance, and Jen threw him backward. He fell onto the floor in the doorway, blocking access to the fourth car. Jen brought the tomahawk overhead and jammed the point through the zombie's good eye and into his brain. He went limp. Lungs heaving, Jen leaned on the doorway and looked into the fourth car. The outbreak had spread there, and she faced more than 20 fresh zombies. Wayne and Zeke had reached her. 8 more zombies pursued them, all the rest having been destroyed or moved into the next car. "Change of plans," Jen yelled. "We stay in this car. Take the rest of them out." Zeke stepped next to Jen. "Stay back." He pressed into the remaining zombies, his katana a blur around him. No longer worried about hitting a human, he spun, swung, and danced down the aisle, thinning out the remaining zombies until only one remained. A shot took that one down, and Wayne stood behind Zeke with his pistol pointed at the zombie and a smile on his face. More zombies entered the fourth car from the back and rushed up the aisle as Jen tried to close the door, but the heavy zombie she'd killed blocked the door from closing. "Look!" Zeke yelled. Jen turned back to the third car. The old man was fumbling with the door latch. "The old man's a fucking leader!" Jen yelled. The door between the second and third cars slid open, and the horde burst through. Chapter 13. The old man lurched into the second car, his intense yellow gaze on Jen. She grabbed the dead zombie blocking their escape. "Help me!" Zeke and Wayne pitched in, and they rolled the zombie out of the way. Zeke ran into the fourth car and took a stance halfway down the aisle. Jen pushed Wayne through. "Back him up." Wayne raced down the aisle, and Jen stepped into the car, closing the door behind her. The horde up front held back, and the old man stumbled toward the door. "Oh, hell no." Jen pulled her pistol and let the old man get closer. When he was only 15 feet away, she slid the door open a foot and propped her gun against it for stability. A quick aim and a squeeze, and she hit the old man in the neck. The horde roared and pushed forward. Sweat pouring down her back, Jen aimed again. The horde had just about reached the old man and would be on her in a few seconds. Time slowed. Jen lined up the sights and held her breath. Fighting the urge to hurry, she squeezed slow enough to make sure she didn't pull the sights off target. The pistol boomed and recoiled. A hole appeared in the old man's forehead, and Jen leaned back, slamming the door shut. 3 fingers made it through the doorway and were sliced off when the door closed. The horde roared and banged on the door. Jen gave them the finger and spun to help out Zeke and Wayne. Her breath hitched as she took in the scene. Zeke and Wayne stood side by side in the middle of the car. Waves of zombies pushed forward, the seats the only thing keeping them from sweeping over the brothers. Jen aimed at a middle-aged woman in a bloodied pantsuit and put a bullet in her temple. Wayne knocked back a zombie climbing over a seat. Zeke beheaded a young man charging down the aisle, then spun and sliced at a teen goth girl who'd climbed on the back of a seat and squatted there like a gargoyle on a medieval church. Jen shot another zombie about to reach Wayne. "We are so screwed." She holstered the pistol and drew the tomahawk. Darting forward, she planted her blade into a one-armed zombie's forehead. Stunned, but still undead, it struggled to its feet, and Jen finished it off with a second blow to the same spot. Another zombie pushed up the aisle between Jen and Zeke. Zeke was locked in a struggle with the wiry, athletic zombie coming over the seat. It had avoided the swings of his katana, but was kept off balance and unable to attack. Jen took on the aisle zombie and swung sideways with the tomahawk, planting the pointed end in the zombie's temple. It dropped like its strings had been cut, but took the tomahawk with it. No time to get it. She yanked the pistol from its holster and shot the 2 closest zombies point blank in the head. She shoved one on top of the other, which slowed a third that was creeping up on her. "Too many. Getting tired." A booming voice came from the other end of the car. "Work your way to me." Jen looked up. D-Day's head and shoulders towered over the zombies, his machete rhythmically mowing down the undead. She retrieved her tomahawk and attacked with new energy. "Maybe we can get through." The bodies had stacked up in the aisle, which kept the zombies from rushing them full force, but also blocked Jen's way forward. "We can't get them all," D-Day said. "Make your move now, straight down the middle." Zeke hopped onto the pile of bodies blocking the way and took out 2 zombies climbing over. His eyes were wide and maniacal, and his face was splattered in blood. Jen ran to Wayne. "Follow Zeke, I'll be right behind." Wayne shook his head. "I'll take the rear and cover you." Here comes the freaking testosterone. "I need you to help clear the way with Zeke. The rear is easy. Is that what you want to do?" Wayne pursed his lips, then dashed to join Zeke. He leaped onto the body pile and jumped off with the bat over his head. He landed next to Zeke, the bat crushing a red-headed zombie skull. D-Day reached the brothers. Both of his bare arms were wrapped in clothing and taped. He used them to push back snapping zombies. Even when one latched onto his arm, its teeth didn't penetrate to the skin. "Smart idea." D-Day glared at her. "Now!" Jen raced toward the others. She jumped onto the pile of bodies and used it as a springboard to leap down the aisle, avoiding several zombies spilling in from the seats. D-Day turned and rumbled toward the back door like a human plow, his forearms pushing back the remaining undead. Jen split one zombie's skull and avoided another's grasp as she hurried to catch up. D-Day reached the back door and yanked it open. Zeke and Wayne sprinted through the door. 6 feet away, D-Day yelled, "Duck!" He swung the machete at Jen's head, and she dove for the floor, tumbling through the doorway. She slammed into Wayne's shins, taking him down. A zombie woman's head rolled in behind her and came to a stop between her outstretched legs. D-Day slashed another zombie across the face, then backed into the car and slammed the door shut. The zombies piled up at the door. Jen stood and brushed off her pants. "Thanks. Good thing for us you were on board." He shrugged. "First thing I saw was people running down the aisle. It was like a cattle stampede. I looked to see what scared them, and this car had a bunch of zombies tearing into people." He patted his sheathed machete. "Figured I'd take a few of them out, then join the cattle. But that's when I saw you guys." Zeke sheathed his katana. "Maybe we should just stay in here. Both doors are secure." A low rumbling came from beneath the seats. It grew into a maniacal growl. Then a figure streaked across the aisle and disappeared under the seats on the left. Jen hefted her tomahawk. "That fucking cat. That's what caused this shitstorm." "Then we've got to kill it." D-Day raised his machete. "I'll get it." Wayne crept down the aisle, his bat cocked over his shoulder. "Wait," Jen said. "We need to do this together." The cat sprang at Wayne and he swung wildly, clipping the cat and knocking it back between the seats. Wayne scrambled back to the others, his eyes wide. "Damn, that thing is fast." Zeke kept his eyes on the seats. "How do you want to do this?" Jen took a deep breath. "Zeke, you and I will each take a side of the aisle. We climb over one seat at a time together." She pulled her pistol and handed it to D-Day. "Get down on the floor with the pistol. If the cat tries going underneath, take it out." Wayne looked at her. "What do you want me to do?" Now there's an attitude change. "Stand back with D-Day and watch the aisle. In case D-Day misses, you're his backup if it charges him." "I don't miss," D-Day said. Jen climbed onto the first seat on the left. The next seat was clear, but she couldn't see all of the third seat. Zeke crouched on the seat on the right, his eyes surveying the tops of the seats in front of him. "Anything, D-Day?" Jen asked. D-Day lay on his side with his back to the door and the pistol in his outstretched hands. "It ain't on the floor." Jen caught Wayne's eyes. He nodded. "Ready." "Next seat." Jen stepped onto the next seat as Zeke did the same across the aisle. "I'm clear," she said. "Same," Zeke said. "Next seat," Jen said. Jen froze as her lead foot touched the seat. She held up her free hand and listened. A soft purring came from somewhere ahead. "Is that on my side?" Zeke squinted and tilted his head. "Can't tell, but it's not far off." "Still nothing on the floor," D-Day said. Jen's heart pounded and her mouth went dry. Is this it? Am I going to be taken out by a cat? She brought her other foot over and stood on the seat. Nothing in the next seat. She looked at Zeke and he shook his head. "Next seat," she said. With a high-pitched growl, the cat launched itself at Zeke's face. He ducked and brought his sword up. The cat sailed over him and missed the blade by a half-inch. It landed on the floor in the aisle, then sprung at Jen without hesitating. A shot went off and Jen flinched. The yellow-eyed beast sailed through the air, its claws outstretched. Jen brought the tomahawk around with all her strength, but it would be seconds too late. The silver barrel of an aluminum bat flashed by Jen's face, barely missing her, and slammed into the cat, sending it flying into the wall, where it hit with a crack and fell to the floor. Another gunshot. "Got it!" D-Day yelled. Jen plopped to the seat and put a hand to her face. That was too fucking close. Wayne stood over her, concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" Jen nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." He nodded and turned. "Thanks," Jen said. He looked back at her and smiled. "We all watch out for each other, right?" She found herself smiling back. "Right." He held out a hand and she took it, and pulled herself up. They stood face to face a few inches apart. His eyes were a deeper hazel up close. He leaned toward her and her heart picked up again, but not from fear, not from exertion. His lips were inches away from hers. She closed her eyes in anticipation. "Jen," D-Day said. She blinked and stepped back from Wayne. What the hell was I thinking? About to make out with a guy in the middle of a zombie apocalypse? It's like a bad movie. She turned to D-Day. "What's up?" He pointed to her waist. "Didn't you have a pouch belted around you?" Jen followed his gaze. The pouch with the serum was gone. This has been The Hybrid, written by M.A. Robbins, narrated by Laura Jennings. Copyright 2018 by M.A. Robbins. Production copyright 2019 by M.A. Robbins.
I hope you enjoyed Part 1 of The Hybrid, Book 4 in the Zombie Uprising series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next upload. I'll see you next time.